All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I will call to order this Tuesday, July 14th meeting of the Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission. We will begin with meeting minutes from June 23rd. Now, I know there was an issue. Did other commissioners get the minutes?
When I was able to look, there was something wrong with the town website where going in for the agenda, you had to log in, but I was able to go in by going in through last month's agenda. So the minutes are posted.
Yeah.
So I did see, I did.
So-
Yeah, they weren't emailed, but they were posted, so.
All right. Or have other folks reviewed the minutes? We want to push this to the next meeting, just to save time. Yeah. The agenda item. I didn't get it. I was pretty late, so. Can I get a motion to postpone a vote on the June 23rd meeting? That's still our next meeting. Commissioner Vaughn.
I moved to postpone, discussion of the minutes till the next meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Braun moves to postpone. Do I have a second? Commissioner closing seconds. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion to postpone to our next meeting, please raise your hand. That's unanimously. Thank you. Our next item is an executive session with Attorney Pierce on a number of items. We have Stilson LLC versus P&Z Shapiro Commons and Stilson LLC versus P&Z Shapiro Commons on both the 19-unit development and the 60-unit 830G. 108 Biro LLC versus Town Plan and Zoning Commission, and an attorney-client privilege memorandum to the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. Can I please have a motion to go into executive session with Attorney Pierce and to invite Ms. Harrigan and Mr. Mullen? Commissioner Randolph.
I move to go to executive session
And to invite,
to invite Director Harrigan and Mr. Mullen.
thank you. Do I have a second? Commissioner Lee, seconds. Questions? All those in favor of the motion to go into executive session with Attorney Pierce and invite Ms. Harrigan and Mr. Mullen, please raise your hand. Opposed? Commissioner Mullen? Okay.
I don't believe we should have to mention executive session.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 6-0 with an abstention. Okay, we will take, the commission is going to go into closed session. We're going to leave the room to do that. We will be back.
Recording stopped.
we are back from executive session. No motions were made, no votes were taken, and I will just note for the record that Commissioner Braun did not participate in the discussion of the first item, Stillson LLC versus P&Z Shapiro comments on both applications. Next, we have applications to recommend to public hearing. I'll read them separately, but call them together. We have 166 and 172 Pine Creek Road, special exception and coastal site plan application of Kevin and Natalia Coiner for an addition to an existing single-family structure with retrofits for FEMA compliance on a lot with 2 legal pre-existing dwelling units in a beach district zone. 3541, 3553, 3571 Post Road, and 886 Kings Highway West. Special exception of Sebjev LLC for day nursery use and excavation, design business district zone. A zoning regulation amendment to section 6.5.1 that design business districts to allow the town engineer to modify the width of driveway access in section 32.4.3. Special exceptions / day nurseries to add standards for multiple lot frontages and screening requirements along lot frontage. And 1230 Merwin's Lane, a special exception application of Pilot House Special Needs Resource Foundation, Inc. to allow for additional special event activities in conjunction with a nonprofit agricultural use and a residence AAA zone. And please have a motion on these items. Public hearing, Commissioner Levy moves to recommend to public hearing. Do I have a second? Commissioner Capozzi seconds. Commissioner Levy? Commissioner Capozzi? No, further comments. Any other comments? Commissioner Monahan?
Could I get just more information about, zoning regulation amendment 6.5.1? The town engineer modified with the driveway access. Are those two, adjoined? And so there's section 6.5/1, which is on business district, and then also there is section 32.4 of the special exception dam issues. They're together. Why are they?
Director Hargan, you want?
Well, those are proposed by the applicant who is proposing the daycare. The day nursery. So those are 2 zoning regulation revisions they'd like the commission to consider in conjunction with their application.
So is that a blanket decision that they're making to intending to modify the width of driveway access? Is that just for one parcel?
No, you'll see it when the regulation comes before you. It's at the discretion of the town engineer.
Oh, awesome.
And they're submitting it just in case we don't get to it, but it's actually within the regulations that are gonna be before you. That little portion is actually in the regulations that are gonna be before you this evening. They're hedging their bets because they have an applicant who wants to get this approval within their due diligence period. And so even though these will be similar to the ones that will be before you tonight, they're proposing them as well.
So this will not be in a situation if we hear this, or we modify our regulations, the town engineer will be allowed to modify the width of driveway access on multiple parcels without coming before this commission. Is that correct?
It would be in conjunction with applications that come before this commission.
Whether they're summary review or.
That's correct.
Or not.
Yes.
Commissioner Braun?
Just, because I was just looking at the last item on our agenda tonight, which is something Ms. Harrigan proposed that I haven't seen before, which basically says what this new application is saying. It says,
That's correct.
about lot
Yes,
driveways.
you are correct.
would have
I'm
to
proposing
satisfy-
it in hopes that we get to it and make this revision, which I think is a
this
common
written for this
sense.
application, the thing we're doing tonight, was that written for that application that's coming?
No, it was written as a result of that application being proposed and us understanding that the town engineer needs to have discretion when it makes sense to have an exclusive left-hand turn lane, an exclusive right-hand turn lane, and then one egress driveway, which then makes that driveway wider than 24 feet. We had an absolute standard that we adopted in our regs that seemed like an appropriate decision to make at the time. And again, I feel like with zoning regulations, we understand them better as the projects come through the process. And this project, as well as a different project, have come through the process that have made us realize that at the discretion of, for example, the Connecticut DOT or the town, or in consultation with our town engineer, that we need a little bit of design flexibility vested in that town, department official who reviews traffic for us and understands when we need the potential for an alternative.
So basically, an applicant came to us, they need a change to our regulations. That is on our agenda tonight, so that will render moot their application, which will come up next time.
As long as we process it before them.
But are we doing this just to shouldn't they be before us to explain their project before we
They
discuss tonight's
will.
regulation?
They will, they just submitted their application, but just in case we did not process this. Within our planning time, within our regulation
that's
review
good.
time, that they, for a better design of their project, they wanna make sure that this gets implemented. So if for whatever reason, the commission doesn't act on the own recommendation by staff, they wanna make sure that it's covered within a regulation
Yeah, I haven't,
amendment proposal.
it's just a process question. I haven't
Yep.
seen before that we're implementing regulations in response to a customer or a developer that comes in. But it should just be explained to us, that's all, so we know that,
Yep.
so this thing that's on the agenda tonight is in reaction to the guy that proposed something that will be on the agenda next week.
Well, because we made that initial regulation amendment to say we only want a 24-foot wide driveway, because we were really thinking about the building frontage that we wanted in our commercial districts to be the primary feature along that parcel frontage. But there are some scenarios where an additional maneuver option within a driveway makes sense to allow a wider driveway. Does that make sense?
I guess we'll do,
So we're only discussing increasing the driveway width. We're not decreasing the driveway.
Only at the discretion of the town engineer as recommended by the town engineer. So
The
an
town
applicant can't come to us frivolously and say, well, I think this is gonna work better, without reviewing it with our town engineer, who has to agree with that recommendation.
And the DOT is involved in that as well.
When it's a state road, yes.
Any other questions?
Could we also discuss the last one, to allow for additional special events activities in conjunction with nonprofit agricultural use center? There's an issue with a church right now down in Millwall. That's having some kind of issues with events. So is this, can you just explain what this is going to be that we'll be hearing? So I can do some.
I
research on
think it's best to have the applicant do that. They're the ones making the request. And we're required to move this to public hearing, so
We
it's
are
best.
required to do this one.
Yes, we are.
With no information. If you don't have it.
If you don't move it to
Because
public
it's special
hearing, it's a Fourth
exception.
Amendment
Yeah.
violation.
and are any of these new applications related to the new housing law or our new regulations that we passed in the last few months?
No. Well, just the zoning regulation amendment for that driveway width. And potentially the day nursery one, but, I mean, again, the applicant will explain that. But you have to move this to public hearing, so it's the applicant is gonna explain all this when it gets to
So
the
we're in a
actual
public hearing now, but I never saw this one come to be requested. Is that because we're initiating it? The one that's on the agenda tonight?
Yes,
So
That's
when we
staff.
initiate a regulation change, that does not, we don't have to move that to a public hearing. We just have to hold a public hearing.
that's correct,
So no one knew about this until tonight. I didn't know about this till tonight.
because the applicant is proposing that.
Oh,
For-
and
for
the
this
one that's
part.
on for tonight, to let the
Well-
engineer decide driveway widths, that was proposed by you.
Yes, that's correct.
And therefore, there's no real public notice about it other than what showed up on the agenda and tonight, like,
No, it was noticed in the paper.
oh, okay. But I mean, it's not something that came before us to be put over to a public hearing. It just showed up on the agenda, so, okay.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to move these items to a public hearing, please raise your hand. Opposed? Standing? Okay, motion passes
Two
5,
abstentions?
2 abstentions. 5
Just due to the non-application.
A question through the chair to Ergen. If you don't move things to public hearing, how long is it before they get approved automatically?
I would guess you'd have to expire, all portions
65
of
days,
the-
right?
yeah.
So
yes,
if we don't move things to public hearing, they get approved in 65 days automatically, just as a point of information or permission. Yeah.
I'm sorry, were you speaking to me?
If we don't move items to public hearing for applications, they are automatically approved within 65 days because we have failed to act.
Provided there's substantive
No,
request to be made.
no,
Okay, no.
Well, I abstain because I don't understand why.
I'm not
we-
asking, I just wanted to raise that point and get it on the record that if
We
you
we
do
should
not.
just know the genesis of the regulations that show up on our.
For the ones that are before you to move to public hearing, those are applicant driven.
Okay, next up on old business, we have 1073 North Benson Road, a special exception application request of Fairfield University for a new campus building, innovation hall for science and engineering studies in a residence R3 zone. Can I have a motion on the item, please? Commissioner Capozzi.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Capozzi moves to approve. Do I have a second? Commissioner Braun seconds. Commissioner Capozzi.
I think it's a beautiful building and it will be a nice addition to
I'm
the,
sorry, I'm having trouble hearing
I think
you.
it's a beautiful building. It'll be a nice addition to the university campus.
Commissioner Braun.
Can I make a friendly amendment that the motion to approve have a condition that an additional 36 trees be planted in locations be determined in consultation with the tree warden?
Commissioner
To
Capozzi.
Commissioner Capozzi. This was something
That's-
that,
That's fine with me. I thought that was included, but of course, I think that's great.
It's, well, it's not included. The staff comments note, point out what the applicant said during their presentation, which is that the applicant's amenable to that.
Oh, I see.
So to be clear, you're good with amending the motion to approve with the condition that the applicant plant an additional 36 trees.
Yes.
so I don't need to do anything else.
You don't need to do anything else.
So, yeah, so it is a beautiful building, and I was a little bit concerned about the loss of trees and also the flooding. Just remembering back when the turf field was built and all the agita with the neighbors, I'm wondering if we could have a recommendation that if there are flooding issues, that we recommend that they meet with neighbors to discuss it, because it just seems like we approve everything, and we always probably will, that Fairfield U needs and wants, and the neighbors complain about flooding and this drains off in the other direction, and they did add stormwater detention. It does add a lot of impervious surfaces, and they will be planting trees somewhere on campus to make up for the trees they're losing, but they're cutting a huge, huge amount. So would it be amenable to Commissioner Capozzi to add just a recommendation that if there are complaints of flooding, that the school will meet with neighbors to try to resolve it? Just not even enforceable, just something to sort of give a guidepost? Because we hear this always after the fact, everything looks good and then suddenly there's issues.
Commissioner.
I'm happy to add the recommendation, but it seems like Fairfield University is proactively engaged in dialogue with the neighbors consistently, so.
We hear different versions of that.
Okay, well, I'm happy to add the recommendation, because it
So
doesn't seem to be contrary to their general way of being.
The history with the turf field was kind of a lengthy thing where the neighbors didn't feel listened to, and the turf field created allegedly problems that went on for many, many years. And then eventually infrastructure things had to be done off Barlow Road because of water coming off in that direction, so eventually got resolved.
It sounds like it was resolved. I know one of the neighbors who was
Yeah.
part of that conversation and was impacted by the previous flooding situation spoke at the public hearing for this and
That's
did not
right.
raise any additional complaints to my recollection. It does sound like it's in keeping with what the university is already doing. So as a recommendation, it seems like it should be.
So no harm, no foul if we make the recommendation. Okay. And then basically all the criteria we use for a special exception, I think, are satisfied. The location, type, character, and size and use of the buildings are in harmony with and conform to the orderly development of the town and the neighborhood, and they won't discourage the use of property or impair their value. Number two, the nature and location and use is such that there's adequate fire protection. Number three, the street serving the proposed use are adequate, and this, again, is not adding any extra, it's just another building to be used by, by the school, and that it's in compliance with the plan of conservation and development. So I believe it does satisfy all that. It was a beautiful structure, and it's gonna be a great addition, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Other comments? No, I'll just add, I agree. I think the design, I was really impressed by the design. I think it was one of the more interesting architectural designs I've seen recently, certainly for an academic building. And I think the plan for actually using the space and some of the that are included in that look really interesting. So I think it'll be a great addition to the town. Okay, no other comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve the special exception application with the condition and recommendation as stated, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, another for 1073 North Benson Road, special exception application request of Fairfield University for a food truck, plaza, and enclosed dining area in a residence R3 zone. Can I please have a motion on this item? Commissioner Capozzi.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Capozzi moves to approve. Do I have a second? Commissioner Randolph seconds. Commissioner Capozzi.
I happen to think this is a really cool development in and of itself, and I think it's great that they're putting an actual structure in place of a tent. I think it's a great thing for the students. It's obviously something that is popular and enjoyable, and
Thank you, Commissioner Randolph.
Yes, it's a thoughtful addition to the campus, replacing kind of a desolate parking lot with an active use. It enhances the quality of life for the students, and its location appears to be open for public use, which for those who venture over there, it'll be a plus. So I think again, it reflects I think a raising of the standards by the university that have been going on for a while for the design and expansion of the campus. And it's an interesting and innovative project, and happy to vote for it in support of it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, I do note that a member of the public was concerned about the potential noise and the hours, but I'm hopeful that the additional screening will alleviate any concern there. And if in fact that fails, then that would be an appropriate thing to be addressed with the noise ordinance. But I don't think it's one where we need to apply restrictions right at this time.
If any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the special exception application, please raise your hand. Voting passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is our public hearings. The first is a zoning regulation amendment and application of Russo and Rizzio LLC on behalf of True U Design and Development LLC to add section 10.3.d transit community middle housing in the design residence district overlay. The proposed regulation would permit up to 9 units on residential lots, a minimum of 1 acre, in the limited area between Interstate 95 and the Metro North Railroad per Public Act 25-1 by summary review, and with the provision of housing unit equivalency points for all units without the requirement for collector road access per section 10.7. I believe we left off Attorney Green. We were going to go to you that started the public hearing. I think you needed some additional time. Right. Been a while. And while Attorney Green is preparing, if anyone is joining remotely for this or any other item and wishes to speak this evening, please make sure to sign in and chat and indicate you want to speak so you can be unmuted when it's time.
Sorry. This is all one page.
Two separate.
One is one page.
Yes.
So for the record, Joel Green of the Law Offices of Green and Rhodes, representing Sasquatch Conservancy. Late great Michael Bologna used to say, never hand out papers. He rules the commission. He was a terrific lawyer and a good friend. But I'll start. So we're spending a lot of time, and the commission is far more aware of it than I am. So much time talking about, we're having this dialogue in our community about affordability, community concerns with traffic, with congestion, with infrastructure capacity, and with loss of community character. It's a big topic right now in Fairfield. And certainly this proposed zone, this permitted middle housing development certainly sort of clashes with a lot of the themes of that discussion. 8-2 Connecticut General Statutes is the statute that authorizes zoning commissions in the state to adopt zoning regulations, and there are a series of legal standards in it. 8-2 speaks to a comprehensive plan where you have to consider the POCD in adopting regulations. You have to do things like lessen congestion, ensure adequate transportation, water, sewer, schools, parks, and other public needs. And really, this amendment is being advanced without considering a lot of those factors under 8-2. And first of all, it doesn't, it's inconsistent with the POCD, and the POCD that you adopted prioritizes preserving existing neighborhoods, single-family neighborhoods. It focuses more diverse housing in areas that have infrastructure to support it. And we see a lot of that development, and there are corridors with better infrastructure. For example, near downtown, near the Black Rock, near the metro station, the Black Rock station. And this amendment serves to sort of push these new entitlements outside of the targeted approach that the POCD contemplates, meaning it creates more dense housing in areas that are sort of contrary to what your POCD speaks to in terms of preserving neighborhoods. And what it actually does is it allows 9 dwelling units as of right on qualifying 1-acre lots in the I-95 Metro North Corridor. I don't understand how it is that a lot that is located on one side of the tracks qualifies, and a lot that could be 100 feet away on the other side of the tracks, albeit on a street, doesn't qualify. So it kind of creates this arbitrary boundary for these zones. And the as of right creates a process problem. And it means that there is no application to this commission. There is no discretionary review. There's no public notice. And it's sort of, the town loses site by site oversight. And the reason I've handed out 2 documents, and I know Attorney Rousseau is listening, and all that I handed out, and I know he's very familiar with Section 10, which deals with overlay districts. And when you created this, you did this to kind of create these other housing opportunities, but you put in all these protections. You spoke about the sort of the level of road that it has to be on, feeder road, and you also included the special permit standards so that this commission sort of has that review. And before you allow this sort of development to just be inserted into a particular neighborhood, there are all these protections so that this commission sort of has the ability to review these proposed developments on a case-by-case basis. That's the point of it. And so you put all these protections in Section 10. It makes reference specifically to special permit uses, and it refers to dwellings for 1 or more families and accessory uses, but it says they're special permit uses. And so you have to satisfy 31.7. So that's the other section I gave you, which are the special permit standards. That's the single sheet here. And you can see that there are sort of these findings that the commission has to make. in 31.7, and I won't go through them because I'm sure you're familiar with them, but you have them in front of you. But it speaks to having, not affecting traffic. It speaks to sort of to affecting character of neighborhoods. It speaks to preserving property values. There are all those protections built in. And this sort of says, though, all of that is out. So up to these 16 units, you sort of, if you have that 1 acre of property, you can drop it in and there's sort of this summary review. The collector road safeguard is waived. There's no corridor-wide traffic analysis. In other words, there's no overall analysis of traffic in the area with an application under this regulation. So it risks increasing congestion and cut through traffic in neighborhoods and on streets that are designed to have this density of development. And so you lose that ability to control that. Your POCD speaks about wastewater, stormwater constraints, inflow, infiltration, capacity. By just adding this by right density across multiple parcels, you're not checking the development for capacity of infrastructure. So you lose that control. Resilience hazard policy. So the POCD discourages significant density increases, and we know we have areas of town that flood that are between the railroad tracks and I-95. So you lose that review because suddenly this regulation allows that development basically, again, sort of with this very little review. So it increases intensity without resiliency solutions for a particular parcel. It is a mismatch with our own zoning framework because our regulations for DRD, for special permits are built around, and again, case-by-case findings, neighborhood harmony, avoiding undue congestion, POCD consistency, and this text amendment totally bypasses that framework. And last, look, Public Act 8002, House Bill 802, it does allow certain middle housing approaches, but it doesn't require Fairfield to adopt a blanket by right collector road exempt entitlement that conflicts with the POCD and that conflicts with 8-2. So the Sasquatch Conservancy urges the commission to deny the amendment because it's inconsistent with the town's plan and statutory obligations. I don't know if you have questions for those.
That was brief for you.
Fine.
Commissioner Braun.
Wore me out with that executive.
So basically, and it's been a while since Attorney Russo came before us, basically this is taking the existing DRD overlay district and adding it to the whole area.
It's dropping in.
So this
Create
is not a zone change. This is kind of a
a
zone,
text amendment.
but it's also a zone, you're adding the overlay district
It
to
is,
that geographic area.
it's creating the overlay district from Westport to Bridgeport in between I-95 and the railroad
But
track.
isn't that the same thing as a request for a zone change in the map, a zoning map
I think
change?
it's counted, it's more couched as an overlay.
But our overlay, when people seek DRD status, they do go with a zone change, don't they?
Yeah,
But this is not, I'm trying to understand the process here.
yeah, well, I think Attorney Russo's gonna have to explain that because I don't fully
Okay, yeah.
understand. As I understand it,
Yeah,
you come in with a plan, you either show a 1 acre parcel or assemble 1 acre of property in that zone on any.
So-
Yeah, go ahead.
because we know this is related to one property, 111 Mill Hill Terrace, isn't it? Is that, has he mentioned that's the project? That's what we surmised anyway.
Well, that's what I surmise as well, and that's
But
why.
he didn't really say that's what it's for.
Certainly that adds to the interest of the.
So I guess what he could have done was said, could we create, so first he wants to change the overlay, so anyone who wants to develop any parcel between Bridgeport and Fairfield, between Metro North and 995 could come in with an application as of right
Correct.
and go
16
against
units.
our existing overlay regulation for design residence,
Correct.
which has more restrictive requirements,
You don't have to go through the special permit.
special permit. Okay, so that's,
16 units or less on 1 acre in that area.
and he's living it to 9 units, I guess. but
Right.
It's still multifamily or, yeah.
Commissioner Braun, can I just
Sure, yeah.
direct part of your last question to Director Harrigan, because I am curious about that.
It's 9 I'm sorry, 9. I'm
the-
thinking of 802, but
If this was approved, how would that work? Would a map amendment also be
No,
required?
at least the way that Attorney Russo on behalf of the applicant has indicated, you would still need to change the zone for the parcel where you are requesting the DRD. He's shaking his head. You can confirm with him, but it just changes the language within the DRD. You still have to land that overlay for the parcel
Parcel
where
by
you would like to
parcel
implement
basis.
this.
Thank you.
So is this similar, is this comparable to the one we heard on, up by the Hi-Ho, up, by the Merritt Parkway? Is this so sort of a similar?
If you think about it that way, Commissioner Braun, so for example, normally 830Gs are a 65-day review if they don't have a text amendment or a zone change associated with them. And it's the choice of the applicant. In this case, he's kind of structured it where within the DRD regulations, so you have to basically rezone that parcel. It makes sense as an applicant that you'd probably do the site plan review at the same time. So de facto, you're choosing a public hearing process, even though you can't mandate it per the regs, but you could separate them. So if somebody today has a 1 acre parcel within that area and they want to rezone it, then they want to sell it and let somebody else actually do the building design, then that building design, if it's not linked to the zone change at that particular moment in time, would proceed as a site plan review as this regulation is drafted. Attorney Russo, do you concur?
But I think that the confusing part is, I believe it, I think there's a confusion between landing it, the discretion of the commission to allow it to land it or not.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said
I
exactly.
think you still have, the commission still has discretion to land it.
The property owner on an individual basis would have to apply to have their parcel. So in theory, we could have, 36 different mini little overlay zones.
It says as of right.
Yeah.
I think there's some confusion in the language. I welcome hearing Attorney Russo
Well,
on
I
it.
have another follow-up question. In our agenda, it says summary review, which is slightly different than as of right. It's close, but it's slightly different. Can you explain the difference between as of right versus summary review? I know summary review is a new term that I never heard before, the new housing law. And that's what our agenda says, but the actual proposed language in the regulation says as of right. To me, that's a lesser standard than even summary review, which is also very, very limited. So my understanding is summary review, it's kind of like a compliance review. It comes before us, we don't hold a public hearing, and all we're allowed to do is to determine if it complies with our regs. And we can't have any discretion. And as of right means it doesn't even have a hearing. It just gets done at the front office, at the zoning department.
At the counter.
We don't even see it. We don't even know what happens as of right?
Correct.
So either one, to me, is not really adequate if you're talking about potentially developing with 9plexes up and down these little neighborhoods. I mean, I just have to understand that better. As of right, development of 9plexes are very large. The ones down on Reef Road are quite large. And also, is there an affordability component or is that wiped out also by this? Because in our PRD reg, don't we have an affordability component of 20%?
Can you direct that one to Attorney Russo?
I will, but the 9plex, according to the housing law, I think in 9plex, there's no affordability requirement. I don't know if that supersedes this. I guess I need to understand that better too.
I believe
Are
it's,
you is Attorney Russo requiring any affordability with this?
Well, let's,
It doesn't say so.
I think Attorney Russo, I presume, maybe I shouldn't, is going to speak on rebuttal. So
Okay,
we
well,
have
that's
anyone
all
who
I
has
have.
questions for Attorney Russo on the application, let's direct those to him.
I'd like to make a
Is there,
statement.
Commissioner Monahan?
I'd like to make a statement on it. As I read the applicable statutes, PA 25-1 is cited often. And the recently adopted Fairfield amendments, I don't see section 10.3D as compelled by state law. And adopting this opens the town of Fairfield up to legal risk. The commission's legal exposure is materially larger from a yes vote on this than from a no vote. And that should be part of what we consider and discuss tonight. First, PA 25-1 doesn't require the special overlay. It doesn't require these exact rules. It doesn't require any as of right density on top of what commercial and mixed use lots in the corridor would already receive under summary review. Adopting 10.3D is our own choice, a discretionary choice, not a state mandate. We are not in violation if we don't do this. Second, the commission has the option that can keep us fully, has the options that keep us fully compliant with state law. We can defer, we can deny without prejudice, we can condition adoption on the town first, putting in place adequate notice and transparency measures for summary review applications generally. None of those actions put Fairfield out of compliance with PA 25-1. And third, the middle housing framing not only tracks one of the state statute categories, but section 10.3.d adds parameters the state does not require: a 1 acre minimum lot, a 9-unit cap, and an exemption from our own section 10.7 design and site review. Those additions are a town choice layered on top of the state framework. Commercial and mixed use lots in the corridor would already receive summary review under PA 25-116 without adopting 10.3 at all. So the question before this commission tonight is whether or not to comply with state law. It's not whether or not to comply with state law. It's whether to voluntarily adopt a special overlay with specific parameters authored by the applicant's own counsel beyond what the state requires. And I believe this is an absolute no vote. And I think there is legal risk for the commission in voting no. And the framing that a yes vote is a safe vote is wrong. In my reading, it's the opposite. Voting yes in this exposes the commission and the town to at least the following: arbitrary and capricious challenge on incomplete record, a POCD non-conformity challenge under 8-2, a contract zoning challenge given the amendment's authorship and narrow parameters, an 8-8 appeal from any of the
Commissioner Monahan.
4+ opposed commissioners.
Commissioner Monahan, I need to interrupt you for 1
Yes,
second.
That's it.
I
I'm
just,
done.
it's okay. I just want to remind, for the sake of any commissioner who has an opinion, we're in public hearing right now, and I would just advise against indicating that your mind is made up already at this point. I just wouldn't.
I just- I just said one thing I left out is you don't need to do this to get HUE points for, these developments. You can still have a tailored approach. You can still have applications that require special permit review. So if that argument is made, I just want to have that out there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brown, go ahead.
So, and again, I don't know if Attorney Green or Attorney Russo has a list of all the properties that would be affected. There are a lot of areas that are quite quite developed, in the sort of east side, but there's a lot of little neighborhoods, Grassmere, New England, the whole New England Avenue area would be falling under this.
Yeah, but it's easy to, if I may, it's easy enough to assemble 1 acre.
Yeah.
So you can't.
That's right. Yeah. Or at least when we did the 5-plex regulation a couple years ago, we now allow in a B zone, a 5-plex. I think that's as of right, actually, except for coastal site plan review. And I think we excluded wetlands, but we at least, Mr. Wendt did give us a list of, there were only 12 properties that could be affected, unless you, of course, consolidate properties. But so if anyone has 15,000 square feet in a B zone, they can put a 5-plex up. But this is, a 9-plex is much bigger than a 5-plex. So I know Attorney Russo had said, we'll get more points for this. I need to understand why that's worth sort of degrading or like diluting our existing DRD regulation that we just kind of liberalized or expanded about a year ago, I think, probably February, March of 2025. We significantly expanded it to allow 12 to 14 units per acre. And, but with the safeguards of us being able to put, conditions and do site-specific review by our commission. And again, when we do public hearings and site-specific, project-specific review, we get information that we never heard it. It didn't show up in the application. So that's a big concern of mine when you're allowing a great deal of development without the public hearing. You cannot just rely on the engineering department to say it's all okay. That's why we were elected to do this. So I need to hear an answer to how it's worth it for us to give up all of our authority, okay, that Commissioner Monahan mentioned, to get a couple of points. And how many points do we get for that? I mean, how much more do we get to give up our authority? Is it worth it? I need to understand that better.
Position is you don't have to give that up to get the points on a development.
There's something you get, I think, if you allow, did he say that there's something we get if we allow this? I don't know.
You can still impose, under that act, you can still impose special permits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so giving up special permits is significant because that allows us to put conditions of approval on and to look at these flood prone areas. I've seen some inundation maps put out by Circa, the sea level rise people up in Yukon and everything. And some of the areas of Metro North are going to be underwater. Okay, so I think we need to be concerned about that and not have, I think we need answers to these questions. I'd like to have some more research about where the floodwaters are going to go, the congestion, and what could happen to these little neighborhoods that are already surrounded by development, that have single family zones right there, single family areas.
Any other, I think, any other questions for Attorney Green? There'll be more opportunities to ask Attorney Russo questions. Thank you. Thank you, Attorney. Mr. Chairman. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to be heard on this item? Come on up. Again, if you're joining remotely and wish to speak on this item, please sign in chat.
My name is Matthew Halleck, 6 Somerville Street. I'm also the owner of The Voice newspaper, but I'm speaking as a citizen, so not really professionally. I had to write it down. I'm speaking in opposition to the proposed transit community middle housing overlay district. While I recognize that the town is under pressure from Hartford's Public Act 25-1, this specific amendment as written leaves Fairfield utterly defenseless. First, by removing our established design standards tonight before locking in rigid objective architectural standards, this commission is essentially handing a blank check to developers. If we allow a summer review process to replace public hearings and commission votes, a single zoning officer will be forced to approve non-unit complexes behind closed doors by right with zero neighborhood input. Second, this amendment explicitly allows these dense developments to bypass collector road access. Cramming multifamily units into the narrow corridor between I-95 and the railroad tracks without mandatory collector road infrastructure is a recipe for gridlock and a direct threat to public safety. I am holding up the historic town planning maps. Oh, I left them over there. You guys have seen them a million times. Decades of deliberate, careful planning went into protecting our neighborhoods from oversaturation. If you pass this overlay text tonight without first codifying ironclad objective architectural rules regarding exact roof pitches, mandatory New England materials, and traffic access, we are completely eroding local control. Do not rush this text amendment through just because Hartford holds a clock over our heads. Deny this application and send it back. I would also request, I know a lot about the planning and I've read all 8 plans. I've audited them. I know a lot about the history of Fairfield and the deficiencies in that current plan. I'm asking if you can, we have once a month, you have planning set up already. If I can come back and present to you in 3 weeks when you have a planning meeting, that's like a 20-minute presentation proper. So you guys have a total understanding of everything that's going on with the POCD. It really needs a lot of work in a lot of areas in addition to the maps and stuff. It's just a request I make to you that I can do that as a public service to the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Anyone joining remotely who wishes to speak? Mr. Mullen? There is not.
Remind them to press *6 if they're.
If you're joining by phone, please press *6 if you're looking to speak,
Raise your hand.
or raise your hand, or press the raise hand button. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close public comment. We'll go to Attorney Russo, who's joining us remotely for rebuttal. Attorney Russo.
Chair, members of the commission, Chris Russo with Russo Marizio LLC, offices at 10 Sesco Hill Road in Fairfield, here on behalf of the applicant. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Very loud and clear.
Okay, you want me to turn it down?
No, turned it down already.
Okay. So just to answer some of the questions, I mean, we discussed a lot of it at the initial hearing. But you know, again, this was an amendment born of a provision within 8002, section 16 in particular, which updated section 8-2S of the Connecticut General Statutes. And it created a new mechanism that Fairfield could use to earn HUE points for market rate units, not just the affordable units. And so in looking at, you know, the law is written the way that it is, and it has this ability to get points for market rate units, but it does have the requirement that it be as of right. And so, you know, that aspect I couldn't get around, but I thought that if it was put within the designed residence district, it would allow this commission to still get to review sites within this proposed corridor and determine if they thought it was appropriate for a DRD. So the intent is that you would submit a zone change application, just like I have, you know, done for other DRDs, to locate the property within a DRD. And I think at that time, it's not a special exception permit review, which again, you know, if it required special exception permit, it wouldn't fit within this provision. But the zone change, I think, does offer an opportunity for the commission to look at the piece and determine if they think it's appropriate, if somebody did come as of right with a development that would be up to 9 units. And, you know, you could ask for analysis on traffic. I think you could, you know, any study that you might ask with a zone change, you could request. And if you felt the site was appropriate, you could approve it for that site. If you didn't, then you would just deny the zone change. You could look at coastal resources and things like that. If you thought there was a risk, or if you didn't think it was appropriate from a you know, flood perspective, you know, you could deny the zone change. So it allows still for the commission to have that review, but it stays in accordance with 8002, which Commissioner Monahan's right. This is not a mandatory requirement from the state. This is just trying to, you know, avail the town of being able to accumulate these points for the market rate units as well as the affordable units, because you would still be required to provide affordable units. If you had a 9-unit development under your regulations, you have to provide 2 affordable units. So you would accumulate the points for the 2 affordable units, and then you would, like in the instance of a 9-unit development, you would get additional points for the 7 market rate units, which would yield a total of 1.75 HUE points on top of the affordable units. So that's what this amendment aims to do. I'll just, you know, responding to a couple of the points brought up. The state statute 8-2S and the amendment both state this is as of right. So they're aligned, the proposed amendment. And what that does is you can have a special exception level of review other than a determination, this is what the statute says, other than a determination that a site plan is in conformance with the applicable zoning regulations. So it still has to comply with the regulations, unlike a affordable housing development. But it's not a special exception permit level review. Again, I think some of that review can be handled during the application to designate the properties within the zone. There was discussion about the location of this corridor and why this particular location. as the amendment and this HB 8002, which is Public Act 25-1 as well, is intended to be transit middle housing. This proposed corridor is between two main transit arteries in town, which set a clear line of where it's allowed. It's not an imaginary line that isn't visible. It's readily visible. It's not a line where a property could straddle both sides. It's not one where it could be standing northward or southward. You're either in between I-95 and Metro North or you're not. So it's as clear as day to everybody where these developments could go. Fairfield's unique as a town. We have 3 train stations. The length of this corridor following along 95 is 24,000 feet. And in that span of I-95, we have 6 on-ramp and off-ramp locations. So there's a lot of access both for the highway and for to the train. I use the GIS and it's approximately 6,500, 7,500 feet between the Southport train station and downtown train station. And there's approximately 8,600 feet between the downtown and Metro. So essentially, no matter where you are in this corridor, you're less than a mile from a train station. And on top of this corridor would be close to a main commercial thoroughfare on Post Road. If you look at the TOD study, it identifies areas in proximity to the train stations, and it delineates proximity by walking distance, 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk. This is 15-minute walk is about a half mile in distance. So a 15-minute walk from any of these stations covers a good part of this corridor, and and it's appropriate to its name, transit middle housing. So we think it's an appropriate delineation. I went over the level of review again. The affordable requirements would still be in place for a development like this. 9-unit development would have to provide 2 affordable units. And the thing I'll say about these 9-unit developments is they tend to go up very fast. I don't know if you've driven by a 204 Old Post Road recently, but work has already started there. And it feels like that hearing just happened. Whereas we have apartment developments, which, yes, accumulate HUE points and accumulate more HUE points than the 9-unit development would be. But there are some that were approved 2 years ago and nothing has happened. As this commission knows, points don't accrue until the end, not when they're approved. So I think this amendment has the ability to provide additional points to the town and to provide them quickly with the goal of obtaining, a second moratorium. I also think it's important to note this amendment does not increase density beyond what the existing regulations already contemplate for a DRD. I know I made this point the first time. A traditional DRD, under the current regulations on a 1-acre lot is permitted up to 12 units. And this amendment caps something that would be this as of right development under the DRD at 9 units. And as Commissioner Braun noted, the Residence B allows possibly 5-unit developments on 15,000 square feet, which is basically 14.5 units per acre. So this is only for 9 units per acre. It's not expanding beyond anything that's currently permitted as far as density. At the first hearing, there was a comment. Commissioner Braun asked me to look at the protest petition. I did review that. I tend to agree with her. I don't know why 802 didn't just scrap protest petitions as a whole, because nothing changes when you file it, besides it being on the record. So it would be just a majority approval. But again, I think the way this amendment is structured, we give the opportunity for this commission to ask for reports and to look at a site to see if it would be appropriate for an up to 9-unit development. But that also means we have a public hearing on the zone change, which means abutters will be noticed and get a chance to speak at a public hearing. So is trying to find a way to work with 8002. I have no issue coming before this commission with a traditional DRD process and a special exception permit. I've done it on a number of projects recently, but unfortunately 802 does not give credit for those market rate units. And I think there's a way that this, with this amendment that we could structure this, that we could take advantage of this new law and accrue more points, but still have a public hearing on whether this location is or whether any location is an appropriate site for a 9-unit DRD within this corridor. As I said in the initial presentation, I think this proposal is consistent with your POCD. Again, it allows for a different type of housing option, whether it be, a 5-unit, 6-unit, 7-unit, 8-unit, townhouse style, something like that. Allows for more diverse housing options. The POCD goal through 3 states, areas around train stations will be places where people can work, live, learn, and play and be connected. This amendment's geographic focus, in the corridor between I-95 and Metro North, is precisely the transit adjacent area. I think that this goal envisions as an appropriate location for increased residential density. We've talked a lot about the middle housing crisis. I'll just also note the POCD specifically cited a recommendation from the Affordable Housing Plan to potentially allow DRD developments if they were near arterials or collector roads. And I think this is a situation that would be appropriate for that because everything within this corridor is within very short distance to Post Road, to I-95, and to a train station. And then finally, one of the goals of the POCD is to obtain the second moratorium. And I think that this amendment goes to the heart of that and trying to utilize this new law to accumulate additional points. And I think, accumulate them quickly because, again, these projects tend to move very fast, not just 204 Old Post Road, but, those of you who remember the 2 projects on Reef Road, just south of the old 7-Eleven, the new Reef Shack. Those 2 were approved and they were up very quickly. So I think this amendment provides an opportunity to quickly accumulate HUE points. So with that, I think this amendment, is in line with your POCD and happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Commissioner Braun?
So I have a question. So I just want to clarify and understand. So the housing law that we're talking about is 8002, I'm sorry, HB 8002 and section 16, right?
Section 16 of that, yes.
Which is on page, so I'm just reading it now and I see something else I don't like about it. Big surprise. So, number one, we already made that choice. This commission already decided when we passed regulations a few months ago, we decided we didn't want middle housing as of right. We decided we wanted mixed use, okay? So we decided that. So basically what you're asking for us is to go back on what we already decided. We passed a regulation several months ago saying, and this law, section 16 says, after July 1st, 2026, we shall allow for the development of a transit community middle housing development. And that only means, it doesn't have to be in the transit area. That just means up to a 9-plex. Or a mixed use development on any lot that is zoned for commercial or mixed use development, subject only to summary review, and may allow for the development of transit middle housing on any lot that allows for residential use, subject only to summary review. Is that the one you're going under? Because then the next section says, if we do adopt a regulation that allows for transit middle housing, as described in the second one I said, which is the development of transit middle housing subject to summary review, but you're saying as of right, so that's confusing, but.
That whole section dealt with revisions to 8-2S. And so I think that's what Commissioner Monahan was pointing out, which is that there's part of it that was mandatory. And what I'm proposing was not the mandatory part of it, but was something that this commission could approve regulations and be able to acquire additional points specifically for market rate units.
Okay, that's all in A of section 16, where we have the option of saying we will allow mixed use or.
The mandatory, right, the mandatory.
Yep, and we also may allow for middle housing on any residential area, which is what you're going under. And then down below it says, if we do adopt regulations allowing
Yep.
middle housing.
Yeah, you're awarded be awarded 1/4 housing unit equivalent points.
Yes, you get a 1/4 point even for the non-affordable ones, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's what this amendment is trying to target.
But does your regulation have affordability? It doesn't say affordability in it, so. It also says 25-1. Does your regulation have affordability in it?
It would apply, the regulations, with regard to setback coverage and affordable would apply to it. So you would have the same standards
Okay,
as a DRD, except for the ones that are listed by, and again, it's, it requires it to be 1 acre. The thing it specifically exempts is the section 10.7, which is regarding collector roads.
Okay.
It also excludes, historic districts, so you couldn't locate it within a.
But you are going under that section of the housing law, 80 Public Act 25-1, section 16B, parentheses B, that if we do adopt regulations that allow for development of transit, of whatever, middle housing, we get 1/4 point towards like an 830G moratorium. For each unit of middle housing that gets a C of O, right? So that doesn't have to be, it could be affordable or not affordable,
You
right?
got the 1/4 point
Right.
for the market rate.
Okay.
Quarter rate, right? So again,
I understand that.
if you had a 9-unit development, 2 would be affordable, and whatever those HUE points those 2 gained, because it depends whether it was for sale or rental, but whatever those affordable units got you in points, you would have that, and then on top of it you would add 7 market rate that each would get you 1/4, so you'd get the 1.75 points in that instance.
And that's nice to have, but then if you go down to section C of section 16, they kind of take away some power again. They say, if we have adopted regulations that allow for the middle housing as described above, which we just talked about, and we've gotten those points for the market rate units that are great, and we got a moratorium at some point, which we are hoping for a second moratorium. Our one moratorium we have now ends in about 3 years, okay? I think we got it on April Fool's Day in 2025. Then we are not going to be allowed to substantially modify this regulation you want us to pass at
Right,
all.
you
during
can't
that moratorium.
repeal
So
it.
that is terrible. That ties our hands from even doing anything future. Let's say we don't like your regulation in a couple of years and we have a moratorium. We're not allowed to modify that regulation. That's what it says.
You can't repeal it, or substantially alter it during the moratorium.
Why?
But again, that's why with this amendment, you would still have to approve a property to place it within the DRD. So if during that moratorium, if you didn't think that property should be a DRD, you just wouldn't approve the zone change.
I'm just saying, let's say we pass your regulation, we get some points, some people apply, we get some approvals going, we get some points, we get another moratorium. We are blocked from ever changing that regulation during that next moratorium. So we're basically, this bill gives us this chance, this law gives us this chance to get a few points if we really cut back on our ability to review applications down to nothing. But then they take it away.
You wouldn't lose the ability to review the zone change.
But we're losing our ability to modify our own regulations. as a planning agency, we are a planning agency, so we are prohibited from repealing or substantially modifying that regulation that you want us to pass, okay? During the period of the moratorium. So that really ties our hands. That's something I never knew before. I just read that now. So that to me, you know, the law gives us a little chance to get some points if we really curtail our ability to review applications. And, but then it takes it away by saying you can't even change your regulation for another 4 years or 5 years. I think the second moratorium is 5 years. So that's the problem. But, and then for zone changes, which we found out in prior applications, we don't always get a full site plan. We sometimes just get a concept, right? So I just, you know, between that and not.
Right, you would just know that they would have to be in conformance with the DRD regulations. So again, I think you would evaluate the property and you look at it and you say, okay, you know,
But what you're
you know,
saying
this is our setback standards, this is our height standard, this is our, you know, coverage. So you would look at that and then, yeah, you would not, because it's just a zone change, if somebody came in afterwards and had a site plan that was in conformance, that would be, you know, you basically can just review it to see if it's compliant. But I think at that phase, you could see basically how the property laid out and where a building might be able to go and have some understanding, you know, as opposed to like an 830G where, you know, it could go, you know, anywhere as far as setback and,
well,
and things
that's
like
true, but with an 830G, yeah, we can't follow any of our zoning regs, but we do have a full public hearing. And, you know, you know, this does not allow a public hearing. I'm still don't know if you're going under, I don't know if we need to fix our agenda or if you need to correct. You're saying it's as of right, but the statute that you claim to be following says summary review. Either one, I don't like, but
I think we talked about this, like
I-
Attorney Russo, you and I.
which one is it?
were
Is
talking-
it as of right or?
Attorney Russo has sort of been using summary review and as of right interchangeably throughout this application when they're different. And so when the commission votes on this, which is not tonight, it can approve, reject, or clarify the language. So it says, because I think he
Yeah.
proposed language that does say as of right.
Right.
But can
As of right.
clarify that to change it to summary review. It's
But I
up
think
to-
we have to fix our.
Chair, just so you know, because I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
The section 16 in that section B says any municipality that adopts zoning regulations that allow for the as of right development of a transit community middle housing development. And that's what the amendment says.
But then it says subject to summary review and
So the intent is as of right, Attorney Russo.
Yeah, and to be in accordance with this new 8-2S.
so, okay, so you're basically having us go back on what we already did in reaction to the housing law when we decided we didn't want to have as of right middle housing, we wanted to have mixed use. And also going against what we did 12 months ago or 14 months ago, when we passed a DRD regulation that does allow more density than what you're proposing, but it gives us the chance to do site-specific, project-specific review with a full public hearing, put conditions of approval on it with a special permit, and require it be on collector roads so that that's some safeguard that there'll be some capacity to handle it. So
Yeah.
how do you
And well,
address that?
and again, I mean, I didn't write this state law. That's how they give you the ability to accumulate more points. And so
That's-
I think we've tried to, the way we position this amendment, remain compliant with the law, but then also provide an opportunity for public hearing and discussion for this commission about whether the site is appropriate for a DRD.
I would say the only do you see any other benefits other than getting a couple points? And then, of course, we can't change our own regulation during the moratorium that they might help us get.
Well, and again, I mean, and these are, you know, general statements, but I have submitted a number of 8 and 9 unit developments, some within this area, and they have generally been better well received, certainly better well received than some of the affordable housing developments that have come in town. And so, and you have standards here that would still apply to this. And so I think that this is a way to allow a project with moderate density that has standards to buffer neighboring properties and, look at these sites and determine, hey, is this somewhere where a 8-unit development, 9-unit development makes sense? And we can not only get points for the affordable, but for the market rate as well.
Commissioner Randolph.
Attorney Rizzo, you've got a series of maps in here.
Yeah.
I don't see the outline of the proposed district. Am I missing something?
Well, the district is just between I-95 and
No,
Metro.
I'm asking on the maps. Did you outline the district? Did I miss that?
No, no, they're just maps of each section.
These are just maps. You just basically sent us maps of the area that's covered. And so there's 9 of them. So there is not an outline of the proposed district. Is that correct?
No, I mean, it's just those 2 corridors and it's everything in between of it. At the hearing, I went through the zoning map in that area, which again, there's a lot of DCD, there's a lot of DI where housing's already, permitted. And so I analyzed and looked at what portions are Residence B. We went through where the historic district is and how that's excluded and things like that at the initial meeting.
But you're asking us to try to create an overlay district, but you didn't provide the overlay boundaries? Is that correct? You didn't provide the, did he? Okay,
It's gotta be landed.
all right.
Apply.
And so-
Overlay districts are the properties.
Right, but.
You would
the
still have
reason-
to apply
Okay,
it. You'd have to come
provide.
through,
Yeah, okay,
you'd have
I'm
to come through
just
this
wanna make-
commission to designate it.
Want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And then, how many existing properties comply with this standard?
Well, again, and this was part of the discussion, somebody could come and put together properties to achieve 1 acre. So even if you looked at what's existing there now, that wouldn't prevent somebody from applying for the zone change and having put together 2 properties that are under 1 acre that would then therefore be above 1 acre.
So I was just looking at the information provided there, right here, it doesn't quantify the number of sites that currently comply with this. Is that in here someplace?
No, it doesn't have the exact number of properties.
Well, I'm not saying exact. Is there an estimate anywhere?
No.
Okay, and so for this missing middle housing, is there any restriction on the building type? Is there any suggestion that what this building might look like? Is it, is there width?
It would just have to be compliant with your standards.
So, but yeah, right now, I don't think we have a missing middle building type that I'm aware of, do we?
No.
Okay, so there's not a location, there's not a quantity, and there's not an appearance of the building. You submitted a lot of information here and I looked at it, but I didn't see that. Okay.
No, it would just be your general standards that you have for any zone that are in the DRD with regards to things like coverage and height.
Okay, so.
Because again, it has to be as of right.
Right, okay. That's all I have.
Commissioner Monahan.
Has any pre-application consultation occurred between the applicant or you as their attorney and WPCA staff or the commission regarding parcels eligible under section 10-3D?
No, have I brought a specific property to WPCA?
Yes.
No. Not that I have, no.
Okay, will the commission require WPCA capacity confirmation before section 10.3D eligible project files under the act as of right pathway created by this amendment?
Well, I mean,
a different.
You still need approval from WPCA to connect to the sewer, if that's what you're asking. So I mean,
But you're
WPCA has
asking-
their own regulations, so you would whatever development would have to apply to WPCA and get approved.
But if it's as of right,
That's just with regards to zoning.
Can I clarify? Because I feel like with summary review and as of
Wait.
right,
I can't hear you.
with summary through you, Mr. Chair, for summary review or as of right, the other regulations that apply to projects would still be in effect. So if there are wetlands on the
Mhm.
property, it would go to the Inland Wetlands Commission before it would come to this board. If it is within the coastal boundary, it would have a coastal site plan review that is subject to the requirements of our local zoning regulations and state law. If the town has other regulations and ordinances that apply to this property, for example, if this is a rental building, they want to rent each of those units, the health code will apply to that. They'll need a certificate of rental occupancy per unit. They'll have to meet, the stormwater requirements within our regulations. It doesn't exempt other portions that are applicable based in state law and our local town ordinances and your regulations as well, the zoning regulations. All of those things will apply. It just changes the process of approval.
Well, I just have a question. So to that end, so when we did the POCD, this was not anything we planned on. We never planned on expanding this level of density between, on that, 29,000 foot long strip of land between Metro North and I-95. And in fact, I think WPCA, sewer capacity is important because that's significant. That you're basically saying we're going to change our planning that we worked on, I don't know, 7 or 8 years for the POCD. And I remember getting a letter from engineering or DPW saying it could cost $50 million to even do half of the sewer expansion needed to do the POCD that we were anticipating. And that's without this. So I think sewer capacity is important. Right now, half of our sanitary sewer lines are filled with stormwater because of degrading systems. So why would we consider changing our entire planning to add this level of density to that large swath of, I don't know what the acreage is, but it seems pretty big. It's gotta be more than 8% of the town anyway, but without talking to the people that are gonna have to invest in the infrastructure to do that. Like you're asking us to change our planning that we've been doing.
No, I mean, Commissioner, you'd still have to get
This is not
WPCA
part of our
approval.
planning. This was never. part of our-
But you wouldn't get out of, you
of
wouldn't get
course,
out of
yeah.
WPCA approval. You
Oh,
wouldn't
I'm
get
not
out of
saying
a
you would.
wetland, you wouldn't get out of a Wetlands Commission approval.
No, of course not. But you're changing you're asking us to change our planning from what we had. I never discussed changing from single family in that area, those little roads, those cute little neighborhoods that are dotted all through that strip, between the highway and the train tracks. At some point, you have to think of the cumulative effect. What you're saying is we want to do this now. Why would we change it if we don't want to? Why would we change the regulations that we just changed 14 months ago if we didn't want to do it? Why would we just passed a regulation last year allowing us to have, and you should be familiar with this, allowing us to have offsite ownership
Right.
multifamily with offsite, and we can't even get that done. That we're not even using that. So
That's what
why
I'm
would we
here for. I'm
pass
here for to
regulations?
discuss this amendment and how I feel it
Right,
fits
but
in
you're
line with
asking
both
us to
this law and.
change- You're asking us to change, sort of reverse everything we've been doing for the last, period of time.
Well, I'm asking you to amend the zoning regulations, but I do that all the
To
time.
get a few points. The only benefit is to get a few points.
That's why I'm here. That's why I exist.
But is this related to 111 Mill Hill Road or Mill Hill Terrace? Is it related?
It's a
to-
property that could apply to you, but it's almost similar to the discussion we had about the ARHD in that
The one up on
you
Mirror Parkway?
you could approve this amendment and then you could deny 111 Mill Hill Road. That's what the purpose of putting this amendment, rather than putting it in the Residence A zone or the Residence B zone as of right. The reason to put in the DRD is it gives you this ability to look at the site and deem whether it's appropriate. And so you could end up approving this amendment, and then you could deny that particular property.
But when we do special permit review, we have the full thing. We have everything.
Yeah, yeah,
We would do
100%.
that with a
And
zone
again,
change.
if I
We
could have
wouldn't get that with a
written
zone
this
change.
law, if I could have written the state law and put in there that if you did an SEP review, you would still get 1/4 of a point. I mean, I would have no issue with that. But unfortunately, this is the way the law is written. I think there's a way that we can utilize it so you can still review the property and gain the points. And that's what I'm trying to argue to you.
I appreciate your creativity, I do, but basically, it's just like what on the Merritt Parkway one. We're changing a whole chunk of our town for one project, and there's no studies to support it, stormwater, congestion, parking, all that stuff, and then when you do the zone changes, we don't get the full information then either, we're not.
But when
getting
you
that
look,
traffic
like when you
study
look
for
at,
zone change.
well, I mean, that's,
We don't require.
I've definitely submitted traffic, because I'm trying to think of 2040 Post Road and Sherman Street. I thought, I believe on one of them, I did submit a traffic impact statement. I don't
was
see
a
why you couldn't.
minimum
And you could look at
project.
sight lines, you could look at things like sight lines and things like that and see, is this site even appropriate to put up to 9 units at?
Attorney Russo, just give one moment. I think
Sure.
this is rebuttal now, so I think we should really be focusing on, are there any further clarifying questions about anything that we've gone over from any of the commissioners?
I think it's important to note
Go ahead, Commissioner.
that there were 40 some odd residents who live in properties in this district who are particularly concerned about the ramifications of what you have proposed on not only their property values, but what also could happen to the look and feel. I know I'm not supposed to use the word character these days, the look and feel of the neighborhood feel of their neighborhood. Even grammatically correct. And so while it sounds very altruistic of you to be coming here talking about HUE points, this is about a development to make money. And so.
Well, every development's to make money. I
Yes,
almost all of
yes.
them.
So
But I very few are there to make a loss on a development. But again, if a property was proposed, there would be and you submit the zone change application, it would be noticed, and the abutting neighbors would be notified so they could come to you and speak to you and explain why this particular property would not be appropriate for that DRD.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, thank you, Attorney Russo. We'll close the public hearing on this item. We have 20 minutes left and 3 items. We're of course not gonna get through all of them. Director Harrigan has requested that we move number 4, which is section 6, design business districts, up above the others. It's a quicker item. I think the whole is.
Can I make a request on the one we just heard that we correct the agenda to reflect what the actual
Yes,
application, because really it's not
yes,
good
well,
transparency to have the wrong thing written every week.
agreed. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to suggest that we take section 6, design business districts.
Okay.
And that is, hang on, let me just finish calling it, revisions to allow for 12 to 15 feet in height for first floor, required setback standards, including minimum building frontage and setbacks for buildings 30 feet tall or higher, in conjunction with updates to the architectural design standards.
So this is just sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, Emmeline Harrigan, Planning Director for the record. What I've passed out is a correction to the Design Business District regulations. And part of this,
which section is this that we're looking
Design
at?
Business District, so it's section 6.
Section 6, so item 4 under public hearing. Okay.
Yep. And actually, it's item
4.
4, okay. And There were a couple things that were identified within the regulations that, that require a little bit of tweaking as we're starting to see applications come in under these regulations. I am bringing this to you as staff. You may see some things similar that, again, were on the agenda that speak to some of these changes. So if we could just start with item, section 6.4 for minimum first story height. We'd originally had that at 15 feet, and this was something that was recommended to us within the TOD study for our commercial districts to look at elevating that first floor height. As we've been working through our architectural design standards, we've met with many architects, had discussions with many architects, and they've asked for more flexibility within that standard to provide a range between 12 to 15 and lower within the neighborhood design district where those buildings tend to be shorter in stature. So that's the first proposed.
Can you cite who the architects were who asked for that?
There were about 4 different architects who asked that for that flexibility. So we met with,
Who they are. Okay.
well, I think it was Alyssa Kent, it was Mark Andre, it was Phil Cerrone. There was Feinfeld asked for flexibility. They just said sometimes depending on what the program is for the building, it's better just to have that flexibility instead of a full 15 feet, that sometimes you can achieve the same kind of pedestrian engagement with something that's 12 feet, and it's not noticeable to a person, but it means a lot in the overall building design.
So can I ask questions as we go through it, or should we wait till the end to ask questions? Because I have a
Let's
question about.
wait till the end.
I'm sorry,
I said, let's wait till the end.
did you say yes?
Let's wait till the end.
I can't hear out of this ear.
Sorry, I'll say it louder next time.
And then inadvertently, if we go to maximum total floor area of all structures, we left out the footnote in the neighborhood design district where that applies to no individual building shall exceed a maximum of 14,000 gross square feet. So that was just a Scribner's error. And then if we go to section 6.5 for setbacks, this is where originally we had this. So what's highlighted is the standard as it exists, as was adopted. So building frontage width at 70% or a maximum gap of 24 feet for two-way driveway access.
What was it?
That's exactly as it was written. So what we're making a revision to is we're adding a footnote 3. We also realized that one of the footnotes inadvertently ended up separated, so we combined it back. In footnote 1, what we realized is that it should read from the property line, which increases the distance of the maximum setback to 25 feet if you're doing a public plaza or pedestrian amenity space. As a reminder, this is an area that cannot be used for vehicular access or parking. It's intended to be a lively pedestrian space in front of a building. We also wanted to add, we're seeing this on a couple of different applications, that corner plazas may provide deeper setbacks provided sufficient pedestrian amenities are provided as detailed in the architectural design standards. So we'll add that section to the architectural design standards to correlate to that. I would envision that for corner properties, as we've seen with some of the properties within the Commerce Drive area, that we want to really enumerate what kinds of things we find valuable within public plazas, whether it's public art, whether it's furniture, whether it's landscaping. So I'll pull some of that language from Commerce Drive and put it within the architectural standards to correlate to some of the things that we've been wanting to see and that we've seen with developments in the Commerce Drive area. So for footnote 3, this did come up, especially where there are properties that are adjacent to signalized intersections, where they happen to line up with a roadway across from it. where there's a signalization, that sometimes a wider driveway is appropriate, so you can have access in. And then in particular, where you're working with that light, you can have a left turn lane and a right turn lane. So that was brought to our attention, that we need to provide flexibility for those types of scenarios where it really allows for better site circulation and flow, in conjunction with consultation with our town engineer, who of course is who we rely on to review traffic-related improvements as they intersect with the right-of-way. So it seemed appropriate to add the footnote, except those driveways greater than 24 feet wide that shall be permitted in order to satisfy traffic safety requirements at the discretion of the town engineer. Lot frontage areas not meeting the building frontage width criteria shall meet the requirements in the architectural design standards, section 17. Those standards include that you can put, and some of this will be in the daycare application that you see come before you, low masonry walls, landscape beds, because sometimes it ends up that you have to put a parking lot next to it, for example. We just realized that we were thinking in a very rectangular way, and not all lots are the same. I think that for us, we want to be able to achieve design goals that we have for properties to make sure that they're attractive, they're screening cars, they're providing a buffer and a barrier for pedestrians. But they do it in a way that's defined by our regulations, and we don't have to send them to go get a variance. So this was really to be able to address those things that we are seeing in the applications that are now coming before us. The other thing that we're adding to this is removing the additional setback criteria in A, which for years has been very confusing and has resulted in not great architecture for the 3 feet or fraction thereof criteria. This is kind of what resulted in the wedding cake, where you kind of like have to step back and step back and step back. What we think is more appropriate is for the 4th story. And this, of course, applies within our design business districts, in which both the center design and the design commercial district are only allowed 4 stories, 52 feet in height. That 4th story along the street line is going to be required to have a minimum 4-foot setback. They can, of course, do more if they have programmatic needs where they want to have deeper balconies. If they're, for example, have an office tenant who wants a balcony, or a residential tenant who wants a deeper balcony at that level. But for volume considerations, I think that has been something that has been the discussion of the board, is to want to address that 4th floor in some way. And those are the changes that I'm recommending to you at this time. Of course, I'd love the commission's feedback as to, what you find appropriate within this mix. Again, I think with any new regulations, it's been my experience as a planning professional that sometimes, you think of the best possible scenario, and then projects usually require that you just look back at your regs and figure out whether you need slight modification. I would put all of these things in kind of the slight modification and appropriately sensible category, where, we should be bringing these forward to make sure that we're not hindering really good developments. And we're being, thoughtful and intentional about where we're adding these requirements. Again, I think that this was a learning experience as we're seeing projects come forward. And we don't want to be overly restrictive, but we want to work with our applicants to make sure that we end up with projects where we really, can feel confident that those designs work well within our commercial corridors.
Thank you, Commissioner Randolph.
I'll just go through this very quickly. I think the range under 6.4 is sensible. It gives some flexibility.
Just a little bit.
The range under 6.4 is sensible and flexible. It's something that is an important refinement. My only suggestion on footnote 2 is, and this would be in addition, to also give the same amount of range, possibly 14,000 feet seems pretty rigid. On the second page, I think at one point we had suggested a stone wall or landscaping to fill in the 70% gap. Is that elsewhere in the regs?
That's in the architectural design standards.
Okay, great. And then I noticed that I think this was an error we made. It said feet measured from the curb rather than the property line.
That's correct.
And has that been changed throughout the documents? We're changing that elsewhere?
Yes, I've been looking for it
Okay,
in
great.
other sections that are
In
pending.
other sections. Because that was an error a Scrivener's error that came through. The measurement should be from the property line, not the curb as it was before. I think when we updated the regs. And then the 24-foot wide driveway and creating those variances, that makes perfect sense because you're going to need to accommodate different areas. But the 24-foot wide maximum width is something I was advocating for. Is good, so we don't have too many curb cuts. And then the setback makes perfect sense because I don't hate the wedding cake building, but I know a lot of people do. So. So that was my speed comments there. So I think these are sensible and in the category of editing and refining what we have. So thank you for doing this.
Commissioner Monahan.
I'd like to keep this open. I just need a chance to digest this and like read it, but I did want to ask on the lot fronting 3 or more public streets, the setback from all property lines shall be a minimum of 10 feet. Why is that removed again?
Because this commission voted on a maximum of 10 feet.
Okay, I need to check that. And when did we vote on that?
March 24th.
Where it's 3 or more public streets. Okay. And then were there specific developments that were proposed that have asked for these changes to be made?
Yes, the childcare center being one for the driveway consideration.
The Goddard School?
Correct, and Southport.
Yeah.
And then also, they will bring their own, I think as they mentioned when we looked at some of this before, daycare centers are rather unique. They're mandated by state law to have outdoor play areas. So that means that, unlike other buildings, they need to kind of keep open spaces around the building. They have security concerns about drop off with little kids who can run pretty fast. So I think like low walls and fences seems to tie into, I think the overriding goal for the commission in doing some of this was to make sure that for pedestrians, it didn't feel like you were walking right next to a bumper of a car, right? That you had some sort of screening between parking areas, which I think we have found, we need within our commercial districts, but we don't want to be up against them against the sidewalk. So I think that some of the architectural design standards that are recommended in section 17 help to alleviate when it's not possible for design parameters of the building to be able to kind of meet that 70%. So I think this adds a little bit more flexibility instead of being as rigid as we were. Our original concept was, oh, wouldn't it be great to recreate all of like Fairfield Center where you've got building next to building next to building, which creates a really lovely pedestrian experience. But in some of our commercial districts, which maybe we'll get there in about 30 years, there's going to need to be a transition where we add in a little bit more flexibility where maybe right now they can only build one side of a parcel and they don't build the other side. Even the Tungus Hill application that we saw recently is a good example of that, where they had a parking lot on the side and on one frontage, they could meet the 70% building frontage, which was the long portion of the building. But the front of the building of that Tungus Hill, which right now is a liquor store, they didn't meet that frontage because they had to put the parking lot on the side. So there are going to be practical design and site considerations where we need that added flexibility of not meeting the full 70% on every single street frontage, but we give them very specific guidance as to what they can do instead, so that it meets our design criteria, again, for having some sort of barrier between pedestrians at the sidewalk, whether it's a low wall, whether it's a landscaping bed, another architectural feature, for example, but then it also meets our other criteria.
Commissioner Braun.
But shouldn't some of those decisions be made by us instead of the town engineer? Why is it being changed to allow that flexibility?
Only if the driveway is made wider.
So could you just explain that a little bit so I understand that?
So the driveway is where the apron is.
Mhm.
That doesn't include the parking lot. So you might have a driveway apron here. And I'm sorry, I'm making this kind of on the table, but,
Yeah.
and then you have a parking lot adjacent to it. and then you have a building that is maybe like 50% of the lot frontage. Right now, our regulation says that that building has to extend 70% of the lot frontage. And then you can have a driveway that provides access in and access out at just 24 feet wide, which is the standard. That's an appropriately sized driveway apron and driveway in and out. Sometimes you need a little bit more for traffic safety purposes. Sometimes you can't meet that building frontage because maybe this is the only place on the side that you can put your parking because you've got a skinnier lot that's wide, right? And unfortunately, when we come up with these regulations, it's not possible to think through every single lot iteration. And sometimes we learn by applications being submitted to us. And then, we can revise our regulations appropriately to build back in that flexibility.
So the flexibility is in, but shouldn't that be something that comes before us instead of the town engineer? That's all. Because they don't do design work. That's sort of, we're supposed
No,
to be.
but they do traffic engineering. They review apron sizes. They issue the permit for the apron size. They can restrict that appropriately if they think that it's a frivolous request. So just because an applicant wants it, we're going to rely on the professional. Our town engineer is required to be a licensed professional engineer. And that person has experience in reviewing traffic studies for the town, aprons for the town, traffic safety studies for the town.
But we ultimately review the project and approve the project, right?
Correct,
So
but
this-
they're the licensed engineer
Right.
who we rely on to give us guidance.
They give us feedback all the time.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
why would we let them make the decision and we can't overrule them if we don't like?
Because an applicant will need to confer with the town engineer before it comes here.
Right.
So we're gonna expect if in normal circumstances, one driveway in, one driveway out is sufficient. In unusual circumstances, when the applicant is getting an application ready to come before this commission, and usually they'll do a code review, as you guys have seen in your application packets, where they have that interdepartmental review that occurs. Where if they request a wider than 24-foot wide driveway, we're gonna ask our town engineer to comment on that to provide the commission the
But we make
guidance.
the final decision. But
Absolutely.
this gives them the final decision, doesn't it?
Well, it gives them the discretion to make the recommendation.
Oh, to us. We're not
Correct.
giving up our authority here to the engineer, are we?
Well, I mean, but for example, sometimes we have that authority, sometimes we don't. If this happens on the post road and the DOT comes back and says, well, hey, for safety purposes, I think you need something that's wider than 24 feet.
That's DOT.
Right.
We have dual authority. I mean,
Yeah.
To conversion.
but I think my concern here is you're adding flexibility, which is good.
Yep.
But we're the ultimate deciders of what is gonna be approved, not the town engineer,
In certain cases.
right? Does the town engineer ever overrule us on what we do?
We're not gonna see on the applications going forward.
Oh, we're not gonna.
Right.
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. We might not even see some of these applications.
No, this is for any application within the design business district. So this could be, again, for a new daycare, you're gonna see that application. That's what has prompted this. But in looking at that particular circumstance, we said, oh, yes, this makes sense. And we brought it to our town engineer and he said, yep, this makes sense. So I wouldn't say that it eliminates your discretion, but if our town engineer is making the recommendation that this makes sense to do and is better for traffic safety, I don't know why there would be a conflict with this
Well, we could
commission.
say we don't like the whole project because of what the engineer required for some reason. I mean, we could go back to the drawing board or something. Like, I just want to make sure we're not giving the town engineer authority over us.
You're giving him appropriate discretion to make a recommendation.
To us.
Correct. At the end of the day, you could deny this project for other reasons.
And then I had a question on the setback. It says that, but I want to go over time. Was 10 o'clock. Additional setback. Why was that taken out on 6.5.3? How does that allow the wedding cake building that nobody likes by having a building at least 30 feet tall, having additional setback? Why is that coming out if that's in our regulations now?
Well, 30 feet is an arbitrary measurement. So if we're doing a 12 to 15, it doesn't, first of all, comport with what we understand to be typical story design. So you'd be at 30 feet in the middle of your third floor. So it's an antiquated regulation based on our assumption that it was 10 feet per floor. We know that that's really not the case because the ground floor is a 12 to 15 foot floor for viable
You're
retail.
saying on the third story, we wanted setback. That's what the old regulation said?
No, the old regulation would have done it at the fourth floor that you hit at 30 feet. But now you're hitting that fourth floor a little bit taller. And it really, if you look at what's gonna be what's gonna replace it for A, it really does the same thing without making it overly complicated.
So basically, it
Without
always
splitting a
was
floor.
it always was the fourth floor.
Yes.
It's just that the
Out by floor, not feet.
And when do we
Let me
discuss?
just get to Commissioner Levy before we have to adjourn.
Just, what is, in terms of either a corner lot or one, of 3 streets, would they all be considered, 10-foot minimum or 10-foot maximum on the street sides on a corner lot, or how would that be configured?
I think if we're moving to 10-foot maximums in order to really support pedestrian oriented development, I think we have to stick with 10-foot maximums. I think that on corners, there is an opportunity to provide something a little extra. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in the building designs that are moving forward really embrace adding a little bit more at corners. So I think it's a great design feature that we're seeing. I'm really glad that we're seeing it in the projects that we're seeing move forward before the commission. And I think it's worth supporting that within the architectural standards.
Either they'll move the building closer or they'll put in a plaza.
Well, they'll move most of the building closer to the sidewalk, but then they have this exception for plazas. But then we need to really kind of demand what we want within those plaza spaces. Furniture, landscape, trees, whatever it's gonna be, we need to give them a menu to pick from and make sure that those are incorporated as part of those plazas. So they're just not dead paved spaces. You know what I'm saying?
All right, we are past our curfew, so I'll get the last question to Commissioner Monahan, then we're gonna hold this open since we haven't gotten to go to public comment
I
yet.
think the 10 feet sounds theoretically like a great idea, but I do worry about sight lines and cars coming around corners, bicycle riders, people kind of coming around kind of fast, not everything. If we're looking at fences and walls on properties having to be back a certain number of feet and be below 3 feet, how can we say in a commercial district that the building only has to be 10 feet back on a 3-way intersection? It just, to me, that's concerning from a sight line and a traffic standpoint. So I appreciate the plazas that we have on those busy corners right now, and that 10-foot number just, scares me.
Okay, to be continued. We'll hold this open and we'll adjourn.